The tremor begins beneath the sea, and nobody on Crete sees it coming. It is 1600 before the Common Era, and the island thrives in a way the Mediterranean has never witnessed. The palaces rise without walls, their architects confident in a peace so complete that defense seems absurd. Women move freely through the courtyards, their bare breasts declaring comfort and security. The men wear loincloths and skirts, their bodies unencumbered by the weight of armor. This is a civilization that has chosen leisure over vigilance, trade over conquest, and for generations, the choice has rewarded them abundantly. Then the ground speaks. The volcanic island of Thera, today called Santorini, unleashes fury that will reshape the ancient world. The eruption is not merely catastrophic, it is apocalyptic. Part of the island vanishes into the sea. Ash clouds rise so high they blot out the sun across thousands of miles. Waves 100 meters tall race outward in all directions, drowning everything they touch. The Cretans, who built their open palaces without fear, suddenly face the consequence of their confidence. The island that gave birth to European civilization nearly dies that day. When the smoke clears, Crete survives but is transformed. The palaces lie in ruins. The population is decimated. The navy that carried Cretan merchants across every sea is shattered. Into this vacuum, new people arrive. They come from the north, speaking a different language, carrying different gods. They are the Indo-European tribes, warlike and suspicious. They speak an early form of Greek. These newcomers, these Greeks, settle on the mainland. They build cities, Mycenae, Tyrans, Pylos. Unlike the Cretans, they understand fear. Their cities bristle with walls, massive stone fortifications 6 meters high. The Cyclopean blocks are so enormous that later Greeks will believe only giants could have moved them. Life here is harsh, military, organized around conquest rather than commerce. For centuries, these Mycenaean Greeks grow wealthy through a different means than their Cretan predecessors. They do not trade flowers and art, they trade in power. The tablets found in their palaces centuries later tell a story of accounts, not aesthetics. Gold accumulates in their tombs, but so do weapons. Bronze dominates the landscape of their imagination. Then comes Troy. The city stands on the coast of Asia Minor, strategically positioned to control trade flowing from the east. The Mycenaean Greeks decide it must be theirs. What follows is not the 10-year siege of Homer's later imagination, but a brutal military campaign. Troy burns. The city is destroyed, layer upon layer of it, evidence of repeated warfare. But Troy's fall is not a glorious victory. It is a symptom of something larger collapsing. Across the Mediterranean, civilization is breaking apart. Barbarian tribes from the north press downward relentlessly. The comfortable order that allowed Mycenae to flourish, that allowed trade routes to function and wealth to accumulate, fractures under sustained pressure. Almost every major settlement shows signs of destruction during this period. Warfare becomes endemic. The seas are no longer safe for merchants. Then comes silence. For 400 years, the Mediterranean world enters darkness. Writing vanishes. Literacy disappears. The elaborate administrative systems of Mycenae cease to function. No records are kept. No monuments are built. Historians will call this the Dark Ages, and the name is appropriate. It is a period so obscured by time that almost nothing is known about it. What we know comes from Homer. The blind poet becomes the primary window into this lost world, though nobody knows exactly when Homer lived, or even if he was a single person. The Iliad and Odyssey were composed after the darkness had lifted, but the daily life described in them, the details of how people actually lived, reflects the Dark Age reality. The characters in Homer's epics are poor by Mycenaean standards. A king's wealth is measured in pigs, not gold. Men sleep on the ground in ashes alongside their servants. Money does not exist. Cattle serve as the medium of exchange. The heroes of Homer are illiterate. Though they live in a world where reading once flourished, something catastrophic has happened. Civilization has been stripped to its essentials. The Dorians are responsible. These Greeks from the north, more savage and less cultured than their predecessors, have destroyed the Mycenaean world. They have no use for palace bureaucracies or elaborate trade systems. They keep what is practical, the sailing ship, the potter's wheel. Everything else is abandoned to decay. The earlier population of Greece either hides in the mountains or flees eastward to Ionia across the sea. It takes another 400 years for Greece to recover enough to remember how to create art. Around the 9th and 8th centuries before the Common Era, Greek craftsmen begin producing the most primitive depictions of animals and people. At the same time, something revolutionary arrives: the alphabet, borrowed from the Phoenicians. Unlike the linear scripts of Crete and Mycenae, this new writing system is phonetic, simple, powerful. It will spread across the world and become the ancestor of every modern European alphabet. The fog begins to lift. What emerges is not a unified nation, but a fragmented collection of independent city-states, each jealously guarding its autonomy. Greece is a land of mountains and islands, naturally divided into separate regions. Agriculture struggles because the soil is poor and grain is scarce. Rather than solve the problem at home, the Greeks look outward. Beginning around the 8th century, they begin a great colonization, establishing settlements across the Mediterranean and Black Sea. Miletus alone founds 90 colonies. The Italian peninsula, Sicily, the coasts of North Africa, the edges of the Black Sea all become Greek. The alphabet follows the colonists. It transforms into Latin in Italy and becomes the foundation of Western civilization. Wine and grain flow through amphorae that scatter from Gibraltar to Georgia. Yet two cities remain largely aloof from this expansion: Athens and Sparta. Sparta takes a different path. The Spartans, descended from the same Dorians who destroyed Mycenae, solve their land problem through conquest. They subjugate their neighbors in Mycenae, declaring them helots, something between slaves and serfs. The helot population vastly outnumbers the Spartan citizens, creating a permanent security crisis. Sparta transforms itself into a military camp, a society organized entirely around preventing rebellion and maintaining military superiority. Boys are taken from their mothers at age 7 and trained as warriors. Men sleep in barracks even in peacetime. Everything is subordinated to the needs of the state. Athens follows a different course. The aristocracy and common people come into conflict over land, but instead of one group destroying the other, they negotiate. From this compromise, something unprecedented emerges: democracy. But first, tyrants seize power. A Greek tyrant is not necessarily a brutal dictator. He is typically a dissident aristocrat who appeals to the common people, promises them a better life, and uses their support to seize power from his peers. Once in power, the tyrant has only one real goal: retaining power. He makes no meaningful reforms. Instead, he removes rival aristocrats from the city and diverts public attention through festivals and cults. When the people grow restless enough, they overthrow him. The aristocracy, now desperate, agrees to negotiate with the people for the sake of stability. From this desperation is born Athenian democracy. An ancient Greek seeing modern democracy would call it an oligarchy. Athenian democracy is direct, with no representatives. Every citizen can participate in the assembly and vote on every major decision. But citizenship is restricted. Slaves, women, and medics, foreign workers, have no voice. In a city of perhaps 30,000 people, only 6,000 are citizens, and attendance at assemblies is voluntary. Still, it is revolutionary. By the middle of the 6th century, the most advanced cities are not Athens or Sparta, but the Ionian cities across the sea. Miletus, Ephesus, and others master innovations from the East: coinage, mathematics, complex naval logistics. They are the intellectual and commercial centers of the Greek world. Then the Persians arrive. The vast Persian Empire, already enormous, turns its attention westward. The Ionian cities, particularly Miletus, resist. The Persians respond by torching the city and pressing deeper into Greece. For 20 years, Persian armies attempt to conquer the Greek mainland. According to the historian Herodotus, the first historian to actually write down what he learned, as many Greeks fight for Persia as fight against it. Yet Greece defeats the Persian Empire. Three factors explain this unlikely victory. First is military innovation. At the Battle of Marathon, the Greeks employ the phalanx, a tight formation of infantry with overlapping shields and long spears. The Persians, accustomed to cavalry and archers, cannot penetrate it. The Persians allegedly lose 6,400 men. The Athenians lose 192. Second is the Spartan spirit. At Thermopylae, the narrow coastal pass, King Leonidas positions 300 Spartans to hold back the Persian army. For 3 days, they succeed, despite facing vastly larger numbers. The Spartans, trained from childhood for exactly this moment, hold their line. They die to the last man, but they buy time for the rest of Greece to prepare. Third is luck and foresight combined. Years before the invasion, silver deposits are discovered near Athens. Rather than spending the windfall on luxury or immediate military needs, the Athenians invested in building 200 triremes, sleek, fast warships with 3 rows of oars. These ships proved decisive. At the naval battle of Salamis, the Greek fleet destroys the Persian navy, forcing the invasion to collapse. The Greeks counterattack. They liberate the Ionian cities in Asia Minor. Athens, having supplied the decisive naval force, becomes the undisputed leader of the Greek world. A maritime alliance forms. 150 cities agree to make annual payments to maintain a common military force. The treasury is kept on Delos, the sacred island of Apollo, then Athens moves the treasury. Nobody is surprised. The funds are relocated to Athens itself, ostensibly for greater security. In reality, Athens uses the Allied money to transform itself into the greatest power the Mediterranean has ever seen. The city becomes the center of a new kind of empire, not a territorial conquest like Persia, but a financial hegemony based on naval power and economic dominance. The Parthenon rises on the Acropolis. It is constructed not primarily as a temple, but as a central bank. Inside are stored the treasures of the alliance. Without these funds, everything that follows the sculptures, the plays, the philosophy would be impossible. The Parthenon is wealth made stone. Pericles becomes the strategist, the leader of Athens. He uses the Allied treasure to rebuild the Acropolis, which the Persians had sacked. He extends the city walls and redesigns Athens on a grid pattern, a revolutionary urban layout. He patronizes artists like Phidias, who create sculptures that will define classical beauty for all future generations. He supports philosophers like Anaxagoras, who dares suggest that the sun is not a god but a burning body. In half a century, classical Greek culture explodes into existence. Drama, philosophy, sculpture, architecture, all reach heights that will never be surpassed. Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides create tragedies. Aristophanes creates comedies. All of it is revolutionary. All of it addresses current events. And all of it is created in the knowledge that Athens' supremacy cannot last forever. Sparta grows jealous. A Cold War develops between Athens and Sparta's alliance. Tensions escalate until 431 BCE, when Sparta and its allies openly attack Athens. The Athenians retreat behind their walls. Sparta cannot breach the fortifications, so instead it strangles the city. Grain shipments from Africa are cut off. Typhus and plague follow the few ships that do arrive. Even Pericles dies of the plague. Athens, leaderless, turns to demagogues. Whoever promises the most is elected strategist. Alcibiades, the unscrupulous nephew of Pericles, becomes military commander. He proposes a bold strategy. Forget Sparta. Instead, let's conquer Sicily. The fleet is prepared. The night before departure, something inexplicable happens. Throughout the city, statues of Hermes are found desecrated, their most prominent features smashed off. Alcibiades is accused of sacrilege. Rather than face trial, he flees to Sparta and offers his services to the enemy. The Athenian coalition begins to collapse as allies abandon the cause. Athens is defeated. The city that ruled the Mediterranean is forced to demolish its defensive walls. Its navy is destroyed. Its empire is finished. Yet even in defeat, culture flourishes. The playwrights continue writing. The philosophers continue thinking. Classical tragedy reaches its peak even as the city crumbles. There is something about impending doom that sharpens the mind and deepens the art. When the Peloponnesian War finally ends, there is no victor. All of Greece falls into decline. The age of the city-state is ending. The future belongs to someone else. The Macedonians, distant relatives of the Greeks, whom the Greeks have always regarded as semi-barbarians, begin to rise. Their king, Philip II, builds a powerful military and defeats a coalition of Greek cities. He plans to unite Greece and march against Persia, but he is assassinated. His son takes his place. The boy is named Alexander, and he will be called Great. Alexander blazes through Asia like a comet. He defeats the Persian king Darius and refuses to stop. He pushes deeper into India, conquering everything in his path. A new world emerges from his wake, the Hellenistic world, where Greek and Eastern culture blend together. Cities named Alexandria spring up across 3 continents. Greek becomes the language of administration across Asia. Democracy disappears, all power flows from Alexander himself. In Egypt, the priests declare Alexander a god. In Babylon, his court adopts Persian customs. Officials bow at his feet in the Eastern manner. The old gods of Olympus share space with Oriental deities. Then Alexander dies young in Babylon, the very city that once seemed to threaten Greek independence. His empire immediately begins to fragment. His generals war with each other for control of the pieces. The unified world he created lasts only as long as his breath. But something unexpected happens. Even as Alexander's empire crumbles, Greek culture does not die. It spreads. It becomes the dominant culture of the Mediterranean world. When Rome rises and conquers Greece militarily in 146 BCE, Rome is conquered culturally by Greece. Roman generals read Homer in Greek. The New Testament is written in Greek. When Constantine builds a new capital in 330 CE on the site of the old Greek colony of Byzantium, he names it Constantinople and ensures that Greek culture will survive another 1,000 years through the Byzantine Empire. The Greeks never ruled the world politically, but their culture, their alphabet, their ideas about democracy and philosophy and beauty, these conquered the world. The civilization that was nearly destroyed by a volcanic eruption, that fell into darkness for 400 years, that was defeated by Sparta and conquered by Rome and fragmented by Alexander's successors, this civilization became immortal.